Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of the UK League Chat podcast. A bit of a more quiet one today, just me and Tom. Just going over the first week. Basically, we just obviously had the split start. We did our kind of predictions last week, gave our thoughts on how the lineups looked, and we've been quite wrong, I think, especially you, Tom, haven't you?
So anybody follow my Twitter? You put me in this straight away. Right, so as soon as if people saw my Twitter, I basically said like the day before I just put out a power ranking, and I may or may not have said the Barrage were going to finish 7th, and Envision were going to finish 1st. But apart from that, I think rough.
Didn't you mean them the other way around? It was a typo, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was late at night. So it must. But yeah, no, we'll definitely go into a few of those games. But you never know; anything could happen.
It can. All right. So the first one was Fnatic against Enclave, one that I think everyone kind of got right, I guess. When we did our predictions, I think we all said Fnatic to win. Enclave were one of those kind of teams that on paper didn't look like they'd probably challenge for much. And I think a lot of that was because they had some fairly new players I hadn't really heard of. But then speaking of those new players, I think they've got to kind of get up to speed, because I don't think... Well, we're going to the other Enclave's other match, but I don't think in either of their games in week 1 they impressed me particularly.
I think that the way that I watched it live, and then I was like, right, okay, first game of the UKLC, the new dream hack, the new round robin, and then like it's nice to say that they absolutely got dominated, like, to say the least. Like Fnatic Rising were by far, from the first minute to the last minute, the best side, and all I kept thinking was, please don't let this be basically what he is in the tower format, in terms of the academy teams just dominate. Yeah. And to be fair, I do feel like all the games, actually, apart from that one, were relatively close. There were still like clear favourites, but it actually gave me a lot more hope for the rest of the split. But just that first game really, really took it out of me, because I was like, this is really, really bad for Enclave.
Yeah, and even like, I think when we had Prospero on, he was talking about like what he'd heard behind the scenes, or what he'd seen in solo queue. And he was saying about Pride, the new top laner, maybe being the question mark, and he got the most kills in the game. So
yeah, overall, what it is as well with Pride as well, it was one of those where he's such an unknown entity. When you have a look at the other players, you had like you had background research on all of them, but Pride was someone who they kind of just plucked out of nowhere, essentially, it seemed.
Yeah, from what I could see, I think their coach had him at his last team, so that's how he'd kind of stayed with him there. So,
but he looked really good, I thought, actually.
And that may be part of why, if they're saying that maybe from what they've seen in solo queue, or what they'd heard from other people, maybe he wouldn't be one of the top players on their team. But then if he's obviously had experience with the coach, he should be someone that's kind of on it straight away, because he's obviously used to his style and everything, as you'd imagine, at least. And
it was great to see Dan back as well.
Yeah, I felt really harsh for him in summer, because I think it was just he was only kind of put in the Fnatic first team, really, I think, to kind of give Broxer a kick up the backside. I don't think he really deserved not to barely play anything except for like one Rift Rivals match. So, yeah.
And then, like I said, he came back and he didn't miss a step. And obviously, with a lot of these junglers, the whole implication is how are they all going to adapt to this new jungle? That's probably the biggest thing of any team going in to competitive League of Legends. But obviously, Dan got the MVP, and rightfully so got the MVP. He was, I would say, a lot more aggressive than what I'd previously seen Dan being, and I think that's because that's what you have to be in this jungle right now. But it was nice to see kind of a different side of something where maybe him actually, having that sub role in Fnatic's first team did him a bit of good, just off the terms of like scrimming, and in terms of potentially being the person to replace Broxer as well.
It makes you wonder. I wonder if there was like any shout that he could be there permanent after Broxer left. But
I thought that it might have been. I feel like that probably would have been an option, but when you've got someone like Selfmade who Like it wrote itself really, because there was no other jungler I thought in terms of in LEC who could join Fnatic apart from Selfmade. Like because he was at a team which was falling apart. Essentially, it was a team which was there for one split, but was there basically because all 5 of these players are great, and they're all eventually going to get shipped off anyway. And so it was the perfect fit for him. Maybe if Selfmade wasn't there, would they have looked at maybe like China, Korea, maybe, but. Apart from that, you would probably have had said like Dan.
Yeah. Maybe one day. Well, maybe he's still with Fnatic, so.
I mean, they've kept him for a reason as well. Like,
exactly.
you look at like Shikari and Prosper. Obviously, these were 2 players who are very core in the UK scene as a whole. So they could have kept them all the way from the beginning and not tried this shake-up with what happened with Ronaldo and Bando and. Ronaldo and Bando. But they're clearly Fnatic are trying to use this roster to give people a chance, Yeah.
Magic Felix, you'd probably imagine he got that one game, I think, where... Wasn't it like...
It was such an unfortunate game.
Nemesis went bot or something, and it was...
Yeah,
not the way you want to kind of make your debut, really, is it?
No, you want everybody in their actual positions, and you play in their actual...
least,
yeah, exactly. Like... But it's just one of those where Dan had a little bit more of a leeway when he got put in and stuff. At least he was playing jungle with everybody in their actual positions.
And he was playing against NA, which is basically like ERL level anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically UKLC.
All right, let's move on from Fnatic for a minute. So the game 2 was Phelan against Barrage. I don't remember what I'd said for this one, but. Either way, I was really pleasantly surprised by Barrage in both their games, actually. I thought, kind of laning wise, like 1v1 and just that kind of thing. I didn't think was anything like out of the ordinary. But then when they kind of grouped up as a team and their objective play, like knowing who should be where, when, or rotations, everything like that, they looked really good. It was like watching LEC or something. They just kind of out-macroed him.
Well, I did just check. You actually picked Barrage out of them, where me and Prosper picked Phelan.
I knew what was going. I knew they were going to.
So it was really interesting because obviously we both said like before that it was like a coin toss essentially. These were 2 sides who we didn't really know a lot about personally for all of us, and even when Prosper, who's been playing with ERL, basically said, I don't really know much about these players. You know that they've done either some great scouting or some obscure scouting. Barrage though, like you said, Barrage looked really good, right? And I put them like 7th purely because of lack of knowledge. I did say on the podcast that they could be a side which is really good. Ericsson looked really, really good. I thought he was. I mean, obviously he got MVP, but he was just so mechanically better than what I expected him to be. Because when you immediately thought, "Oh, he's on loan from Nordavind," and no offense to Nordavind, but you would expect at this point the UKLC to be a little bit better than the Nordic League. I mean, that's just because of how Riot views it anyway. So to take someone on loan from what is seen as a lesser region, obviously it raises question marks, but it's clearly a smart choice, and it's clearly worked out well for him. And it's one of those where I think if he continues, he could be very good. And obviously we're not talking about the other game, but against over teams, he also performed. He maybe wasn't the best player there, but he did the job against some very, very tough opponents, I thought, especially in the second game.
Yeah. And it was like Phelan, I don't think even looked particularly bad. Bear Tree looks really good still, like he was in summer. He got that double kill where he was like 3v1 where he got dived. And in general, I think they had like a bit of a gold lead, like sort of moving away from the laning phase, so they clearly can kind of do the job, but I think Barrage was just too good for him, to be honest.
I thought that Phelan was a side which I expected to perform the way they expected, in the sense of these are 5 new players. Well, they are 5 new players playing together. So I kind of expected there was some miscommunication throughout that game. I think what it was is genuinely what won Barrage the game was the fact that Barrage was just more of a tight knit team, and in decisive moments they really latched onto it. And I do think the Barrage has a little bit more just off seeing the 2 games. So it is purely off 2 games that they have a bit more of a skill potential, but I think that it was definitely the synergy which really worked and got them over. They're but with Phelan, I don't think Phelan actually disappointed. And these were 2 sides who I would have, I did put middle of the pack, basic second bottom. But with the way that it's shaping up this UKLC, actually, I think this could be one of the most competitive splits we've had in the UKLC. It was rebranded that, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, game 3 was Envision against Excel. I'm sure we'll talk maybe a bit more of Envision in their second game, because this one I think everyone kind of expected Excel to beat them anyway. And to be fair, I think Envision started okay. They had a decent fight. The Rift Herald, they had a bit of an early lead, but then Excel kind of just looked like a kind of a class above, like they did last year as well. They're Man Fnatic. And I don't think, Envision, I don't think played particularly bad or should be particularly upset on that game, but XL just looked way better.
I think it was, I actually watched that game, and I think for the first 15, 18, 19 minutes or something like that, the early game anyway, and a little bit in the mid game, it was very close.
Yeah.
You could tell that skill matchup wise, both are actually very close to each other, which is a good initial sign for Envision, I think. Obviously, what Prosper had said in the previous podcast was the fact that synergy might not be there for them, and he, as people watching this know, he wasn't actually that confident going into this first week. He was very subdued, and I didn't know if that was him just kind of keeping expectations low, or if that was them being actually, oh no, there is genuinely little problem, so if it does go bad, then don't worry, kind of thing. And it did feel a little bit like that. However, I don't worry for them after this, and even the next game, as well, and what happened then, because it is only the first week. Things can change, and now they've got a week kind of fully preparing, because Envision were one of the last sides to be announced, I believe. It was Enclave was the last, and that clearly shows something. Whether they've been created and whether they've been announced says something, but genuinely, they must have been one of the last to be created, and I think Envision was also one of the last as well. So I wonder if that was a case of just trying to find a team straight away.
Yeah. And
that's why there is this little bit of a synergy issue, but I'm not worried about Envision. Now, to speak about, like you said, with BT, again, I thought it was one in the jungle. I thought that Taxa was, again, just ridiculous. Taxa and Dan could be, just seeing them off the early, this is overreaction maybe, but they could be, the top 2 junglers, which is kind of a show back to when it was in Spring Split, which I thought they were actually in summer, because in spring it was Dan, and then summer it was Taxa. So it'd be nice to get these 2 both informed junglers facing each other.
Yeah, definitely. There's not much more on that one. I thought Deadly was playing really well as well. I think Prosper had said it about as well, that had he played? I don't know if he said he'd played with Kasing before.
I think he duoed with Kasing. He said that he duoed with him a lot.
Yeah, and I thought he played really well. And yeah, that's about it.
I thought that Deadly looked okay, but you could clearly see, I think, with the way that the team was playing, that he's not the star of the show. But that's not always a bad thing. I think everybody, and to be fair, in the ADC role, with the way the meta is, you don't have to be the star of the show in ADC at this point. That might change in the patches to go, but I thought that Deadly facilitated his role perfectly and kind of let everybody else do their role as well. Which I think is good for when someone's new, especially because he's the only new one, isn't he, out of the 4?
Yeah.
So, you don't want to be, you're the carry straight away kind of thing, because that puts a lot of pressure, which he probably doesn't need at this point.
Yeah, instead it was I think that first game couldn't be easier really. He was playing Misfortune, they had Rumble Rumble, Jarv, and Braum. So it's just literally wait for someone else to ult, and then ult when they ult, and you've won the fight.
Yeah, exactly. And the next game was I really quite enjoyed the next game.
Yeah. So the next one was M&M against Demise. This was one I think we were kind of split on as well.
I can get it up. I believe
I think I was wrong on this one. I'm pretty sure.
You went Demise. I was the only one to go M&M because I believed in the man known as Chimera, and I mean, he was pretty good to say the least. He really impressed. The whole Phelan trio worked pretty well.
Yeah. And that Ziggs pick as well. Like a throwback. I thought it was in like 2017 or something. And I was looking at the damage charts on it as well, and his damage was outrageous. And then it kind of makes sense. You just throw the ult on the whole team, and they're done. It was like some ridiculous, like 35,000 damage. The next highest was like 17 or 18. And obviously taking siege and everything. I'm not sure. Without being like a top level bot laner, and I could never really tell why it wasn't like in the meta more. I'd always hate playing against it. I'd hate it, and it was just a proper annoying pick. But yeah, they played it really well. I didn't think Demise looked that bad as a loss for them, but then they were just kind of like, could be better. Well, they've got to be better.
So Demise is the only side out of the 8 which I actually have. Like, they're not. I don't think they're the worst side, right? But for me, and this is personal anyway, they're the side which I kind of care about the least. I know that sounds really bad, but like. I don't see them having an upswing, and I don't see them particularly failing. I get interested in teams which are doing really, really well or really, really badly. And so not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes you can be a middle of a pack team, and then when it comes to playoffs, you can push up, a la what Phelan did last season. I would say that arguably Phelan last season was the exact same reaction with me, was like, they're okay. They're probably not going to get relegated, but they're never going to push anything. And they ended up performing ridiculously well. But I have to say, the one thing out of this game, it was just nice to see Mummus back in the UKLC. I don't think he had a particularly outstanding game, but it was just nice to see him. And it was obviously Kerberos and Mummus, which is quite a nice lane to see it overall anyway. But I was, like seeing Mummus back there is pretty good. And I thought in the next game he actually performed very well as well. Yeah.
Let's move on to the next one. So they were the first game on day 2 against XL. Another one. The kind of time it's a tricky. I didn't think that again M&M were like that bad, but then you look.
This felt very similar to the Envision game. I felt like it could have gone either way. And then suddenly BT just clicked, and something happened. And whether it be a team fight or an objective or something, they have this actually. Obviously, this is initial thoughts, but they have this innate ability, I think, to snowball a lead very well. And whether it could be a close game or not, that's actually a very, very good trait to have, because it's your ability to keep hold of a lead. Now, whether they play a team which goes so far ahead, that depends on how good they can do at clawing back a lead. But right now, they're good actually with these 50-50s to take the advantage out of it.
Yeah, because this one, I thought M&M were kind of putting up a bit of a fight, and then, I'm looking at it now, 23 minutes was how long it took to win, which you hear is that quick, you'd imagine they got stomped.
Yeah, no, exactly. But it was a case of just they took something and ran with it, and then M&M just couldn't. Whether that was the comp which they picked, or just how the players just couldn't get on the edge or something. But I do have to say that as much as I praised Chimera in the first game, in the second game there was a skill gap, right? And that's unfortunate. I actually really like him just as a person. He put out a tweet and he basically said that he's frustrated that he's at the bottom of everybody's tier list, and that might actually be true, but he's willing to prove everybody wrong, and I quite like that. This probably wasn't the game to show that, but he made up for it for a really good game against Demise anyway. I'm really interested in what M&M do, and it seems that no matter what change of a roster happens, M&M seem to just always be that little team kind of trying to bite these academy teams.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because last season, I generally didn't think that they actually would have done it that well. I thought it was a good side, but mainly because they had Yusa.
Yeah.
But they still managed to continue to do pretty decent, I thought, considering the academy teams were the most dominant sides. But yeah, go back to BT, they were brilliant. Right, I don't think you could say much more, and they're deservedly 2-0 to start.
Yeah, I can't wait for it's the first Fnatic against XL this week, which we'll obviously come on to, but I can't wait for it, and I can't call it either. It's going to
be close, I think.
Because both of them so far they've had games where people have given them a few problems here and there, but at both times they just look like they're just their natural, well, not, I wouldn't say natural, but just their sort of different level of ability has seen them through, whether they were playing particularly well for themselves or not. So
however, I feel like they had not really Fnatic, but BT definitely have the advantage of that they have 4 of the remaining 5. Fnatic, while they only have 3, like that is the core 3 of the ADC, the mid, and the jungler. So there is that saying that really, because they've got that, and as much as I love top lane, like top lane isn't probably the most impactful role right now, and arguably support isn't the most impactful role right now. Even though both are important, you would probably say your most important roles are mid, jungle, and ADC from a standpoint. So they kept that core, and it would just be interesting to see how these two sides clash it anyway. Yeah. But we'll predict that in a minute.
We'll try to. Then the third game on day 2 was Demise against Fnatic. As we kind of alluded to, it was another Fnatic won both their games. This was another win for them. And this was just another one, really. Again, they look like a team that's from like a league above, really.
I did think it was a little bit closer than the Enclave game, but that's not really saying much. And I don't think this made me think. Okay, at this point, anyway. Obviously, as the day went on, I felt something else. But I kind of thought, okay, maybe the Enclave aren't actually that bad, because Demise had, I would say, an arguably okay game against M&M, and then against Fnatic Rising just looked kind of outclassed, like you said. And it's interesting, actually, because talking about the MVPs as a whole in the league, there was a different MVP in every single game. Like, there was no player who got 2 MVPs this week, which is quite cool and quite interesting to see how different people stepped up. And in this game, it was Xmete, who was kind of solidified himself as probably the best ADC, I think, in the league. We already knew that anyway. I think there was, obviously, you look at maybe Yusa, and you could potentially say Deadly as well. But obviously, I don't know too much about Deadly. I know a bit more about Yusa. But they would be the 3 which you would probably point at. But yeah, Xmete looks great, and it's kind of a shame that he has a player like Reckless because you know what I mean. Like, because I agree, there are some of these players which I'm actually surprised didn't get picked up in, like, even in NA. Like, no offense to Ica, but I'd take MagiFelix over Ica any day. If you're going to pick an ERL person, you pick MagiFelix, don't you? Is
that the French guy for like Immortals or something?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a bit. Wasn't that because was it Zabatine, their coach? Just because he's French, basically that's why I got him.
Potentially. Not confirmed, but yeah.
And there was I don't know if you saw, there was a Forgiven tweet about it, like an indirect tweet, and he's like, I've just heard that someone from a coach from NA got a player just because they're from the same country. Like, what the fuck, something like that.
But Forgiven's doing okay at Misfits at this point. There's a whole thing about Ronaldo. There's a whole different topic on what happened with Misfits, isn't there? Because now Ronaldo, because it seemed like Forgiven wasn't even going to be like in the team at that point, and now he's like probably the mainstay.
Oh no, I'm saying Forgiven, not Forbiven.
Well, sorry, Feathervin, yeah, Forgiven. Yeah. Oh yeah, Forgiven's not having a great time at all. He's definitely probably a mainstay in that Schalke role, but for how long, we'll see. No, but talking about with Fnatic Rising as a whole, like, they clearly must have promised their players something, because I cannot believe someone like maybe an Xmete or definitely like MagiFelix have not got offers from somewhere. You know, like Tax is probably not Tax. Danny's probably the only one which I can think maybe they didn't get offers because they kind of saw his performance on the main stage, despite it being just riff rivals. But they clearly have something for him, and like there's just a lot of these players where I'm like, surely some of these players must have been scouted at least, and they're in this though UKLC, and they might arguably even be one of the strongest sides in ERLs just in general. But obviously we don't know that until EU Masters comes anyway.
Yeah. If they qualify.
You never know. But is it 3 teams automatically qualify now in EU Masters because UK is it because the UK is a top tier league? I believe that we get more qualification or something like that.
I'm not too sure.
No, sorry, it's 2 automatics into group instead of a play-in and a group, I believe. So that'd be pretty cool. So at least we don't really get to see any more play-ins. But to be fair, I think was Fnatic Rising in the play-ins last time?
I thought it was XL.
Well, it might have been XL, yeah. But then that doesn't really prove my point because they didn't do very well. It's fine.
They got through the play-ins though, so.
Yeah, but they didn't do great though. Like, oh well. Well, we'll find out this time. But Fnatic, are pretty good.
Yeah. Then only a couple more games. We had Barrage against Envision. Barrage looked, I thought, really good again. This was one where you kind of thought, okay, well, Envision, you lost to Fnatic or XL, whoever it was, I can't remember. You lost to them, but now you've got one of these lower teams. Now show us that you're the team everyone expects. And it didn't really happen.
Yeah, despite how good Barrage was against Phelan, I definitely still expected Envision to win because I thought that BT actually the BT Envision game was close to a point. But yeah, I just hopefully it is just a synergy issue because I remember on the podcast I mentioned Barrage last season and how they had this like ultimate squad, and then hopefully then it doesn't just collapse because of that, because there was no bad players in that Barrage team I thought last season. Hopefully that's not the same with Envision. I don't think it is. Because I believe that with the way that the round robin fixture works anyway, I think it benefits sides to have a bad start. So right now, I'd be a lot more worried if we still had the tower format because Envision would have been on 0 points, for example. And then could have faced, say, a BT next week as well or something like that. But that is obviously a little bit different. And I do think that Envision have, I would say, just going off this week, a little bit easier teams, to be honest. So it's going to be next week, I think, on when this is if you can finish 2-2-2 at the end of this week, you're still in a good potential play-in for maybe to finish like 3rd or at least get into the play-ins overall, because I think it's the top 4 which get into the play-ins. So you could arguably still say that depending on next week, depends on what happens. Now, Barrage, though, will have something to say because now they're 2-0. So it all depends on how they play, and I just think I don't know if it was, I don't want to say it's luck, but obviously they did just look like a team together, and that could be styles or something like that, but that can also be undone later on in the week, so it'd be interesting to see what happens. Yeah,
so maybe it could easily be something like, Barrage are just the best team, or the team that have kind of synergized the fastest. Maybe a couple of weeks time they might not look like one of the potential kind of giant killers. Everyone else might catch up, so we'll see. I think if Envision can't, like if you say about Barrage last year, I thought this Envision team was better on paper, so I'd be even more surprised if they can't turn it around a bit.
When you've got Shikari on your team, and even Prosper and Yusa, like arguably those 3 names. I mean, Yusa in recent years anyway, but Shikari and Prosper have been like stoneholds of the UK team.
They've never lost a split, really. I don't think they're playing together.
So you wouldn't expect this team to be 0-2.
No.
But it is, because of the round robin format, not that bad to start with, but like I said, if they go 0-4, then there's an issue. Like,
to be fair, if you're gonna, if you do have like kind of slight teething issues, it's probably better that they've even got the Fnatic game out of the way and get one of those 4 like more or less unwinnable games.
They lost to XL. They lost to XL, and then That's they've lost to Excel, so they've lost to one of what you would arguably say the top two sides, unless you predicted them third. But you know what I mean? But you've lost to one of the potential playoff sides anyway, so it gives you at least... It would have been worse if they had to play, say, Fnatic and M&M next or something like that. You know, that would have been, I think, a harder comeback in, because actually these then are arguably, I would say, stronger sides than what Barrage and XL are, but it's not. So they've kind of been given a good draw as well, but a draw which hopefully they can use in their advantage.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last game was Phelan against Enclave. This was kind of the confirmation for me that the Enclave don't look too hot right now. I don't know how you pronounce it. Dragain, is it?
Yes, the mid laner.
Yeah, he looked, I think, a lot better than Air for Enclave, and I think it's Air was one of the ones that I think didn't have competitive experience. And was one of those.
I don't think a lot of them did, because I don't think Clean Sir as well had competitive experience for Enclave as well, from what I can remember. It's, you know what, it's... I understand the risk that Enclave took, potentially like getting some of these players, but they clearly might... It seems anyway, and hopefully I am actually true, that they haven't had the resources as other sides have had. And so if not, then you can understand why they've got the roster which they have. Or it could just be the case that other players wanted to go to other teams and stuff like that. I'm not willing to say that Enclave is going to be bottom right now, despite my very rush power rankings. It just depends on, I think, how they adapt. Because right now, they just don't feel like a side which is able to compete with even like the first 7, like, you know, at this point anyway. And it is like overreactions at week 1, isn't it? It's always going to be like that. I thought that Phelan actually performed pretty well in this game, but again, you kind of maybe have to take this with a grain of salt until we get more in depth of how good this Enclave team is. If Enclave, you know, win their next game in week 2, then that changes my opinion of where I rank Phelan, for example, you know, and where I rank everybody else, because it all depends on how they go. I think that I'm really interested to see how Phelan's roster does, and I do think it does heavily go on Bear Tree's performance. I think this guy will, unless Phelan get a better roster, I think in summer, I don't think he will be there. And that's not a negative thing. I just think that he's actually a really good player who obviously only came in at the last end of the split for Phelan and has stayed with them, probably because he might have not got any offers because of the time he actually spent at Phelan, but has performed ridiculously well. And I don't think he was a standout in this game, but he definitely played his role great, and he kind of made Only Angel... It wasn't really a fair matchup, and I actually rate Only Angel as a top laner in general. I would say that Only Angel is probably the strongest player at Enclave, just off knowledge. But you could see the difference between Bear Tree and Only Angel. And when I would say your win condition is probably top lane for Enclave, and you're losing that top lane, it's never going to go well for you. One thing I do have to say, though, about Enclave is that they all came out on Twitter, I think the Heathen especially, basically came out and said that he's just very disappointed and that it wasn't how they wanted to play, and that they're going to work hard, which I actually I admit that the fact that they know that it was pretty rough for them, despite facing Fnatic Rising, but I think the Phelan game really did take it out, because I think it was a team which they realistically thought they could beat.
Yeah. It's funny you say about Bear Tree, though, if he was to leave. I'm just looking through, I can't think unless he went to a different ERL, I suppose. But then top lane is like probably the strongest role, I would say. In the
it is really difficult.
Yeah, other than maybe Only Angel, I can't think who he would like. Maybe, well, suppose maybe on Demise instead of Kerberos, probably a bit more. What's the word?
I think he's more consistent. I think Bear Tree sometimes.
So yeah, well, we're quite far away from that now.
And obviously, depending on how Sendo performs,
Yeah.
there's always that rumor of, is Sendo the weak link, essentially, and stuff like that, which I can understand. I just don't think he plays the role of a carry top laner, which I don't think XBTXL need anyway. So at the end of the day, I don't think he's actually a bad top lane. I just think there's better players around him, which makes him kind of weirdly look a bit worse, because there's already these players like overperforming. I can't imagine Sendo getting many MVP awards, and so people will look at the rest of BT squad and be like, well, you know, because Sing's got 4 MVPs, Deadly's got 3, Tax's even got 2, and Special's just Special because he's great. It's like, but where's Sendo? And people will look at that and think that Sendo's actually not playing great, but really he's actually just facilitating the role to help his other teammates.
Yeah. And I think that was like before summer last year, wasn't it? A lot of the tier list.
A lot of people rated him low.
As soon as that happened, he just he looked like a new player anyway in summer. So if he keeps that up, then he'll be fine, I think.
I mean, Chimera's already got one MVP, and he was ranked, I believe, like the lowest of every tier list. So, and he's already got an MVP award, so he's fine now for the rest of the split.
Yeah. Alright, cool.
But overall, though, like, what do you think of like just first initial impressions of week 1 as a whole? It doesn't just have to be the players, but in terms of just like the production or anything as well.
I think in terms of the teams, Barrage have definitely been they've impressed me the most, like compared to where I and some people thought they would be. The Fnatic against Excel is something that I think they've both performed fairly as we'd expect. Like, clearly look like the top 2 teams, but I think it's hard to tell which one's better right now. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. In terms of the production, that I haven't noticed like too much difference from LVP yet.
Yeah, they've
not got the little like graphics when someone gets a kill or something, but it's not. I haven't noticed a big difference.
It did feel a little bit just off the production side, and this was reported obviously anyway that it was a rushed decision for DreamHack to have it because they fell out of LVP. It kind of felt like they did just copy and paste a lot of the stuff, which you could understand. I actually don't mind how the format works anyway, and I hated the lower thirds, like, because I thought some of those lower thirds, one, were used completely wrong in the wrong time, like, so they were having like because obviously it's split decision, and obviously you've got to run these lower thirds out and stuff like that. They were putting the wrong player in, or they were even putting the coach in if it was like a 5-man dive or something like that. And it just really confused me. And also, I don't need that. Like, for me, it just didn't add anything apart from the fact of, I actually wanted to see what the stats were at the bottom of the screen, but no, there's this massive lower third which has appeared. So I wonder if they just like, now we'll leave that for LVP.
Yeah, well, from what I could tell, like on Twitter, I don't think there was like a media day or anything like LVP did.
I also thought that Hyperin and Orcs, they were very good, and it seems like it's just going to be them two.
Yeah.
From what I could see, someone might be coming in for week 2. But I believe they do the. Did they do the Nordic?
I thought they were doing it, and I'm sure they did it the first week. And then I saw a tweet just today, something about saying like, "Oh, we're going to be back because of something about the weather," or I don't remember, something like that. I was just kind of glazed over it, and it kind of gave me the impression that maybe they're not supposed to be doing it permanently, but they are this week.
Okay, that's what I mean. So, well, the weather, because there's a storm, isn't there? So I wonder if that's going to stop with travel and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I thought they were really good anyway. And whether I'd like to see them being the permanent of the UK, especially. But obviously, we don't know really what's happened with Excalibur, because obviously Excalibur's had a lot more other opportunities, which is really good for him, and fair play to him and everything like that. I'd like to see him back a little bit as well. But we'll just see. But I thought it was really, really well done, and I thought the games, apart from the first one, because it could have easily put me on oh no, this is how it's going to go. But actually, the other games after the Fnatic games were actually really good and quite competitive. Even the XL games for about the first 10 minutes, and yeah, there's a couple players now which I'm actually like really excited to see, like Flezzy Flores or whatever you want to say, the American player, really, really good and really impressed me. And just to see how these players develop. And like I said, I want to see more from Deadlift because he is a UK talent who one of the few UK talents who's actually made it in other ERLs. And whether that be because of the new import rule, as what was just being discussed last pod, that might have been the reason why he had to come back to the UK. But either way, I think it's a positive for us. So.
Yeah. Just to touch on the casters again, I've just found it is so for Nordic and UKLC, it is Orcs, Excoundrel, and Hitbrain. So I presume that the announcement that Orcs and Hitbrain would be doing it this week, maybe I'm guessing Excoundrel was expected to be there by now and couldn't get there.
Okay.
That's what I presume. So
probably Excoundrel was probably in the UK and stuff like that and couldn't make it over, or there'd be something. But yeah, no, it's good that Excoundrel's doing it as well because I think he's a really good caster as well. And it's good for both of them that they get to cover 2 leagues, especially. It's a lot more research, but they'll know the stuff, won't they? Especially if one comes over from the other. And I think you would expect a lot more crossover between the Nordic and the UKLC with DreamHack there. However, I thought that with LVP, I thought, does this mean we're going to get loads of Super League and Orange players come over and vice versa? The only time which actually happened was when they stole our players. Yeah, they took Hado, Hansen, and there was someone else as well. Pad as well also went. I was like, okay, I know the pecking order which we are at now.
Feeder.
But hopefully it swaps now, and we get a few good players. So good talent, obviously, in the Nordic region. Obviously, there's so many you could count, in anything. So
let's see. All right, I think we'll start to come to a close. Let's do our predictions for this week before we finish up. The first match, we've got M&M against Barrage. If I had to pick this before week 1, I would have thought M&M quite easily. Now I'm not so sure. I reckon I'm going for Barrage just because, like I said, they really impressed me in week 1. But then I don't know. Maybe M&M with an extra week of practice might kind of catch up. Barrage, you never know, might get overconfident. What do you reckon? Who are you going for?
So it all depends on how I rank Barrage and how they actually played and stuff. Because M&M lost to BT, so it's not the most terrible loss. I would say. I'm going to stick to my guns and I'm going to say M&M because I actually was quite impressed overall in both games which I saw from them, and I am unsure on Barrage though, and I don't want to be kind of like going in on them straight away. Now, if they win this game, that probably completely change my opinion. But maybe just to save myself a little bit of skin, because I did put them second bottom. Yeah, let's go M&M. Let's go M&M. I believe in you.
Okay, next match, Envision Enclave.
I mean, come on, it has to be Envision, hasn't it? I know. Look at that. That sounded really bad, right? Because Envision haven't actually performed that well. But neither have Enclave. But surely, just off a skill matchup, even without synergy problems or anything, you have to say Envision, surely.
That's what I've gone for as well. And I can't imagine those. Yeah, I think they'll get it together. Prosper did mention, I think it was before we actually started the recording for the last podcast, that their synergy had, I think, been something that when they first started scrims was a bit sketchy, and he said they'd improved a lot. So, maybe it's just a dodgy week. Who knows? But yeah, I think that should be a win for Envision.
And a bit like with Barrage, this will make me this is a crucial game for I think either of those sides, because if Enclave could beat Envision, who are obviously these are the two sides on 0-2. That's a clear extra point, but a very important one. And if Envision lose, then this kind of makes you think, okay, you could let them have the first 2 losses, but what's going to happen now? You've arguably lost to one of the worst, or the lowest sides anyway.
Well, you think, go 0-2 in the first week, you've had one bad week, that's all right. If you go 0-2 in the second week, that's like 2 out of 7 weeks gone already, and you're like,
exactly.
You're pushing to get like halfway through the split already. Was it only 8 teams, double round robin?
And only half of them are going into playoffs this time. It's not like what happened last split, where I think only one person. One person got relegated.
Didn't go
yeah, exactly. You haven't got relegated or playoffs. It was so harsh. I couldn't believe that system. That was great.
Then game 3 is Fnatic Phelan. Fnatic for me.
I really want to say Phelan, but I can't. I genuinely can't, because I don't think that despite my predictions of what they may actually be, I think that Fnatic or BT might lose this week, like in terms of in the first day, because obviously one of them will have to lose in week 2 because they face each other. But I'm going to go with Fnatic. I just think they are probably by far the best side from what we're getting from week 1 interpretations anyway.
Yeah. And then Demise XL is the last game. I've gone for XL, obviously.
I'm going to go for Demise.
Oh.
I know you're already typing XL in there. I'm going to go with Demise. I just think that, like I said, and I don't think it's anything to do with Demise. I just think that one team is going to lose this.
A hunch.
And I just have a gut feeling that it's going to be Demise. So that means, if this does happen, I'm going to take all credit. If it doesn't happen, I'm going to be like, well, I just took a hunch, Just stab in the dark, it's fine. But I'm going to go Demise. I do. You know what? I need a legit reason. So, Monkeys, I think, could do very well, and Kerberos, and if they can actually work on the top lane synergy very well, they could punish BT in what is arguably, quote unquote, a weaker side for BT. So it's going to be, it could be through the top lane.
Yeah.
Gangplank, just put him on, put Kerberos on Gangplank, and put Monkeys on J4. Put him on Sejuani duty. I don't know, something which can enable like the Gangplank, and then we're good.
Nice.
That won't happen.
Let's see. Then day 2, first match, we've got Envision against Phelan. This is I've gone Envision again, so I don't know. Maybe it's a bit brave to go for a 2-0 after they started 0-2, but I think both of the games, I'm imagining that they'll improve with the extra week, and after that they'll beat Phelan. Yeah,
I'm gonna go Envision as well, because. And I completely understand if you had said, oh, Envision 2-0, I would be like, oh no. But if you're going it by game, you would have to say statistically that they are probably, I still consider them at least a top 4 side, like right now, just off my expectations for them. I might not consider them first anymore, but definitely a playoff contender. Mm-hmm. So for me, by that logic, I would have to put Envision over Phelan. But Phelan could win this, because Phelan looked decent against Enclave, and obviously, nobody looked, and Barrage looked pretty good against Phelan, but Phelan weren't the worst side there anyway. It all depends on how Barrage are and stuff. So
yeah, well, I'm going off it, like I said, expecting Envision have improved. Who's to say Phelan don't improve with the extra week as well, and then and then they beat them, and I'll look stupid. So
because they also looked impressive, I thought, in both games.
They didn't look bad. So I think for both of us to go Envision, it's not actually like as clear as perhaps that says.
People are going to look at it and think, oh yeah, no, but it's actually quite a difficult one to have predicted. I thought that one more than the Enclave game, anyway.
Mm-hmm. Alright, and the next one is Barrage against Demise. So if you said Demise would beat XL, then do you reckon they'll beat Barrage?
Yes, right. So, yes, now get this, I think this is harder to predict than Demise and BT, because I do not know how good this Barrage side is. And, again, I've just put, because I'm going to go Demise, because I have to stick to my guns, but I've just got the Barrage, who were 2-0 last split, to go 0-2 in the second week. Sorry, first week to second week, which is never good. But yeah, no, I think that. No, I'm going Barrage. Right, despite them beating BT, I can't predict 2 upsets. I'm gonna go Barrage. I think that actually they did impress me enough, and I think that where XL have a weakness, I think in the top side, I don't think Barrage, from what it seems anyway, have that same weakness.
Yeah.
And so actually could counteract Kerberos and Monkeys, who are very, very good, like UKLC standard players. Mm-hmm. So as long as Chievo, I think, performs, I think he will be the one who needs to step up in the barrage game, because I thought he was good for barrage. But he wasn't the star, which again, ADC, it's hard to anyway. But when you've got Hado as well there as well, it should be okay. What it is with barrage is the unknown anomalies, which I found, which were Flares, Cybo, and Ericsson, actually proved out to be really, really good, at least initially. I have no debate with Chievo and Hado, especially Hado. But yeah, so I'm going to go barrage on that one. I can't have Demise going 2-0, and I can't have barrage going 0-2.
It's basically Demise are going to beat Excel, and then they're going to say, then it gets the next day and they say, well shit, we beat Excel yesterday, it's going to be a piece of piss, and then
they're going to run the exact same comp, and it's just going to go horribly wrong for them. That's it.
Yeah.
But I think I don't actually think it's that difficult to predict that, because I do think a lot of these sides are actually close, and it depends on how close they are with these academy teams after an extra week. Depends on, I think, how we're going to see the split turn. But the academy sides, though, in the regular season have not always been unbelievably good. Like, the first season of the UKLC was won by Diabolus in the regular season. Yeah. Like, people forget that. Because obviously they didn't end up winning, the overall tournament. But in the regular season, they actually, a lot of these UKLC sides genuinely do perform pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Plus, actually, I think if anyone's got a chance to take games off XL and Fnatic, probably this is the week. If they're playing against each other on day 2, is their prep for the day 1 games going to be like the same? It's probably not. Mm-hmm. If you're Fnatic, who are you going to prep for more? BT or
you're definitely going to prep for BT, aren't you? Yeah, exactly.
So, this is the chance, I think, for anyone to take a game of them. And then whenever the next time they play each other will be the next chance.
Mm-hmm.
Game 3, we've got M&M against Enclave. I've gone for M&M, just because what we said about Enclave, they haven't really shown us much yet.
Yeah.
And M&M look pretty decent.
I think M&M look pretty good. And does that mean I put M&M as a 2-0 week? Which I think,
it does, yeah.
Which puts them, if this goes roughly the same way, on a potential same scoreline as what BT are. So, which could be interesting. But yeah, that would be mad. But yeah, I like it. I think M&M actually look pretty good. They look solid, and they should be Enclave. If they don't, and Enclave also beat Envision, then I think we just need to refresh everything of what we thought. Because this table is going to look mad.
Yeah. Okay, last game. XL against Fnatic.
I'm glad we've got this the second week. I'm really glad we've got this in the second week.
I'm going for XL. Kind of because, from week 1, without them playing each other, I can't really tell who is better than who right now. I'm just going off of the thing from before even week 1 of the fact that XL have more of their players from last year, and their synergy might be a bit better. That's the only thing I can really tell a difference at the moment. But then you must think Fnatic, right? Otherwise you said XL lose to Demise and then beat Fnatic. That can't be true.
So I am going for Fnatic because, but I think before I go into the reason why, you look at BT and you look at this Fnatic and you look at this BT XL side. Genuinely, I could see these two sides, these 5v5s in the LEC. They wouldn't be a top tier LEC side, but if Misfits or Schalke had just picked up these two sides immediately, I would not have batted an eyelid. I think some of the players, there are a couple, but as a whole, I think it's actually two impressive sides. I think that Fnatic are just better skill-wise. I think so there's this always issue about can Magifelix always perform, especially when it's matches which matter. I would say that arguably this is the biggest XL versus Fnatic, academies-wise match which has happened in the UKLC. I think that even in the playoffs, I think there was always a clear favourite and someone who really gone in. But with both these sides, actually do look fairly competitive. And going off the two results, being at the end, did actually defeat their sides in week 1 very easily, despite BT being a little bit more closer in the mid and early game anyway. I think that though I look at that Fnatic roster and I do think it's a bit unfair that they should have that side. And I could very well see them going undefeated the entire regular season. Now, that doesn't mean that means it's going to be a lesser competitive league, because I don't think Fnatic Rising will do it easily, but it could be one of the best sides in the UKLC, dependent on how Pride and how Bravado does, because obviously you still have question marks. We can't be like, oh yeah, they must be absolutely perfect because they destroyed 2 teams. We'll see how they go up against, Sendo and against like Deadly and Kasing especially, because these are 2 players who know the league, who are the benchmark of what you would consider like top tier. I would say anyway, top tier like UKLC talents at this point. Kasing even more than that, arguably, to be fair. So there's definitely a world where I can see BT winning this, but yeah, I have to go for Fnatic. I think that side is brilliant, and whoever beats that side will have to earn it. I think it won't be a case of Fnatic will int, because I think that they're actually a very professional side as well, from what it seems. Like, these players, I genuinely think could just mess around, and I think last split, and even the split before that, they did. Like, you look at like the debacle they did with Ronaldo, like as well as Ronaldo did, yeah, that guy played top lane, jungle, every role basically, and they still managed to do well. And it felt a bit like they just weren't trying. Where this seems like this is the 5-man squad for the academy season for them, and that's quite worrying, because I think this is the first time they've properly took this seriously.
Yeah, it's going to be a close one. I think I can't wait to watch it.
And it's great that it's the final game as well, like the final game of this week.
Yeah, keep it. Everyone has to keep watching. Actually, something we could touch on a bit. The viewership was, I think it's like a bit lower than it was last year, right? But then I think, from what I could tell, a lot of the time when it was with LVP, I'm sure they had it like on the front page of Twitch, which which bumps the numbers anyway, and it's not like that accurate, really. Like, there wasn't actually a couple of thousand people really watching it. It was just kind of there when they log in. So I don't know.
Well, I think we've got to take it. We have to be honest. We do, like, in terms of League of Legends, LVP is bigger than DreamHack, in my opinion. Yeah. I don't think anybody can say that otherwise. Now, in terms of other esports, like DreamHack, obviously with CS:GO and other sports like and other esports like that, yeah, like they clearly have an audience, but like League of Legends hasn't been a major DreamHack audience, at least for a long time. And so for them, a lot of it is trying to regain an audience. And yes, they've had the Nordic League for a few times, but I could say that it's only recently they've really invested in that. Where the LVP obviously had the Spanish League, which had obviously sponsorships and was one of the biggest leagues, one of the biggest ERLs for a while anyway. I just think it's the audience reach isn't there, and I agree. When LVP did post on Twitter, it was on front page. I do think though that viewership will rise as it comes closer to EU Masters, because people will look at the 4 major reasons, which I believe is the German, the German, the French, the Spanish and the English. And I think people will start watching those streams, especially as it comes closer to EU Masters, because people want to see who gets there. Because EU Masters has and will always prove to be a success, I think. It actually does pretty decent on viewership. It gets a crowd, and for a semi-professional tournament, it's probably one of the best semi-professional tournaments, I believe, in esports in general, because the amount of actual people you can get viewing it for what is probably a lot of these players who aren't even on full-time contracts. Maybe a lot of them are, but not all of them. Especially if, like, say, when Diabolus were in EU Masters, I can't imagine them having the same contracts as what a lot of the academy sides had in. Obviously, I think it will get better though, and I think the BTXL match will actually prove to be very, very lucrative for them, because they will hopefully just market the hell out of it. It is BTXL versus Fnatic. These are, hopefully they even go top side. These are the 2 best sides in the ERLs, which may or may not be true. But but you've got to market it. This is a big match, and then you can even hell, you could even say Eminem and Barrage. You say we're starting off with these 2, up and coming teams in M&M and Barrage, and you can say that Barrage, because they're 2-0, they're an unidentified force, and then you're finishing it with 2 established sides. It's all about marketing it, and the viewership will rise because of that, I think.
Yeah, I think it will help. Like if we had Fnatic, were they in the? I don't remember EU Masters. Were they in the final or semi-final last time?
Semi-finals it was.
Yeah, like as long as they keep them, and hopefully Excel can do a bit better this time. The more the better they do, it's just like an advert for the league, really, isn't it? Like if they can, people see that the UK teams are strong, it's more of a reason to watch the UK games.
100%. And I think that. Despite geolocation not being really a thing in League of Legends, it is in ERLs. Like, I think genuinely you're only British if you watch the British scene.
Yeah.
However, that will, I think, eventually change as leagues get more and more popular.
Plus, I think they, I can't remember. I heard like what was supposed to be like a reasoning behind why the UK league doesn't get like the viewers like the other ones, and it was something along the lines of like, if you're in Spanish, the biggest league you can watch that is like designed for the Spanish audience is the Spanish league. So you watch it. Of course, you watch the LEC and it has a Spanish broadcast, but the Spanish league is meant for Spanish people.
Yeah,
and it's easy for them to get into it. If you're from England, what's the biggest English-speaking broadcast? Or that's mainly an English-speaking broadcast, the LEC. So people watch that and aren't as interested in UK league or don't even know it exists. I think a lot of the time as well. And
I think as well, we can't kid ourselves in terms of like participation numbers. While the UK is a growing scene in esports, it is nowhere near as popular as what it is in the likes of Italy, Spain, Denmark, and all the Nordic regions. It is growing. We can't say it's not, but like that is another reason why, because we have. I guess I wouldn't say that. Obviously, you look at Spain; it's a bit different. But we have we're still a lot more of a traditional sport country. It seems where we have like rugby, even cricket and football as like probably the 3 staple holds in the UK. Esports is following up on that, I think, but nowhere near in terms of like you probably look at Spain and they have obviously this is just off the top of my head, but they have football and then probably like another one and then esports where we have kind of 3 major. You look at Denmark and it's probably second, over football. Football's probably the dominant of a lot of them, unless you go to like Asia and stuff like that. But it is a growing population, but compared to other regions, there isn't that interest as much there. Yeah. But it will grow, and it is growing.
I think it's like too much of the old-fashioned. I think it comes from football a lot as well, and it's like, what the bloody hell are you watching? What's this rubbish? And then they go home and they watch like 20 stone old guys playing darts. If that can go on Sky Sports, then I'm sure League of Legends can. Yeah,
there's not many. There are not, but it's a genuine thing. Like for people who do watch this, who are not from England, like darts, snooker, like there is so much sport out there, and it is such an oversaturated market in the UK that for actually a sport to be relatively new, and then a niche of a sport to be relatively new in League of Legends, because esports, everybody classes esports as sport. And then you have the niche inside of that, which is League of Legends, which is Call of Duty, which is Dota and CSGO. I would say like probably the 4 big, probably Overwatch, in FIFA as well, Overwatch as well. But like they're all then have got split audience after that. So it's not just everybody's watching darts; it's then everybody's watching esports. But then those people are watching League of Legends, Rocket League, FIFA, or anything like that. It's so oversaturated in the UK that. For it to even be considered like I would say like a top 4 or top 5 sport, it's actually very commendable in a very crowded UK market. And when generations keep going, the likes of probably like darts and tennis, darts and snooker, for example, those traditional pub sports essentially will probably start to die down a little bit, and that'll be replaced by these newer generations. Because let's be honest, the likes of even cricket, rugby, and football, I don't think that trifecta will ever be broken in the UK. They are such a staple hold in the UK that they will always have an audience in it. and then you've got new emerging sports like potentially American football and stuff like that, which are also trying. So not only have you got esports trying to go in, but you've also got another traditional sport in American football trying to get in. It's this massive battle, it seems, in the UK to try and get that top 5 spot. You don't see it elsewhere, so it's interesting seeing the whole sporting landscape change as generations go on as well.
Yeah, I think it's kind of inevitable, really. I think eventually, because like every kid plays games now, don't they? I mean, even probably when we were like, well, we're not old men, but like our generation, all my friends play games, and now the only difference is now people play, all the kids these days can play them on their phone at the same as well, so there's literally like never a moment they're not playing a game. And obviously, if anything. Like China is a good example where it's like the mobile esports is like the biggest one there. Like PUBG Mobile is like 1 million times bigger than PUBG. You know,
it's mental.
If that kind of feeds over here, it might even, you never know, the big game that makes like the mainstream breakthrough, if you like, could be some mobile rubbish that. I don't know. I'm not really a fan of mobile games, so.
Well, it's the one of the most played. I believe, at least from what I remember. I remember reading it like a month ago. But one of the most played games in Western and worldwide is Candy Crush. Still, to this day.
That's insane.
Right. So you think of how many people play games, and you think of the Candy Crush is still one of the most played games. It's mental, like the amount of hours, and I don't even know if that includes the Asian market.
Yeah.
But people love that game. I've never played it.
No, same.
But I know that people love that game. It's mental.
We'll see. Yeah, so maybe you never know. It could be like, because I know like there's always like Clash Royale or something. It's quite a big mobile one. And then like PUBG. Obviously, I doubt like the other Chinese ones like Arena of Valor. That's like a League ripoff. I doubt would really run in the West where people actually watch League. But
you've got Wild Rift, which is coming out, which is that's console, but that's going into a market. You've got TFT Mobile, which I think will actually be very good for TFT in general. Like that's always going to benefit. Like that TFT was designed, I felt, to be a mobile game anyway, because that's what Auto Chess was played on essentially before it went onto a website. So the mobile games are slowly coming into esports as well. We'll never get League of Legends or probably Call of Duty esports on mobile because the capabilities aren't there, but they don't need to be, I think, at that point.
Yeah. Well, we've kind of veered off topic a bit there. So I think we'll call it a day. I think you've got somewhere to be. So just can't wait for that last game this week. I think I don't know how the draw was done, if it was like meant to be a random draw or something, but that seems a bit suspicious that the last game of the week happens to be the biggest one.
I wonder if the games are randomly picked and then they decide, okay, this is the order of the games which are going to be played. Maybe. Which is smart, because you even look at like BT as the last game as well in the first day, BT Demise.
Yeah.
Eminem Barrage is the first game. And then you've got kind of Feel and Envision, which could be an 0-3 feeling, an 0-3 Envision at that point. So some of the games do feel a little bit like, okay, they've placed them in this order. But I don't know. But it's good either way.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's wrap it up then. So just thanks for listening, everyone. We haven't got a guest this week, a bit more of a quiet one. Maybe might be back with someone else next week. We'll see. So yeah, for anyone that was listening on Spotify, you can follow on there. On YouTube, you can subscribe, and you can follow NineTeeSix, and you can follow us as well. Our Twitters are on the screen. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening.